So it's Labor Day weekend, which means it's September. I don't know about you, but when I realized it was September, I thought, oh my goodness, this year has just flown by. And yet when I think about it, we did so much already this year. We met each other, and we came together to be a spiritual community. This church building was disassembled down to its bones, and now we watch it being built back together, and every single week there's something new and magnificent that's happened. Every single week. So we're on the home stretch now, and it's September. So let's share the work of our hands and of our hearts. I immediately turn to one of my favorite writers, Khalil Gibran, and the writing of the prophet. So I want to share this with you. When asked, speak to us of work, the prophet answered, saying, you work that you might keep pace with the earth and with the soul of the earth. For to be idle is to become a stranger unto the seasons, and to step out of life's procession that marches in majesty and proud submission towards the infinite. When you work, you are a flute through whose heart the whispering of the hours turns to music. Which of you would be a reed, dumb and silent, when all else sings together in unison? How enlightening to think of the work that we do is in unison as music. How wonderful it is to think of the work that we do is in harmony and rhythm with the entire earth. It boggles my mind to think that me and what I do with my days and my hours, one of over 6 billion people on the planet, that I'm in that rhythm of life with Mother Earth, with all the earth. Would I ever want to be silent and not be part of that rhythm and of that music? Now, I can imagine if I were a farmer, it would be really easy for me to keep the rhythm of the earth. Spring, the tilling of the land, the planting of the seeds, the summer allowing what I've planted to grow, and of course in fall reaping the harvest of the earth, and winter resting. But we're not farmers, are we? Most of us are not. We're all caught up in the business of capitalism and our culture and our society and all the bling that goes with that, the cars and the corner offices. So we might miss those subtle nuances of the movement of the earth. We might just go from one season to the next without really noticing much, or we're not honoring those changes of the earth, not being grateful for them. And could we even live our lives and not be part of the music of the earth? To be part of that, to be consciously participating. So here we have the work of our hands, and you know, the work of our hands might be very gentle. It might mean just brushing away the tear of a child who's had their feelings hurt or is bruised by life. The work of our hands might be folding clothes when we do laundry, and as we fold those clothes, we infuse them with love, so that whoever wears those garments also carries our love. I always enjoyed folding clothes, and my daughter thinks I'm ridiculous, but she saves laundry for me sometimes so that I can fold my grandchildren's clothes and infuse them and wrap them with love. So at least they're carrying my love with them when they go about their days, whatever happens. The work of our hands might be strong and diligent, pulling weeds from the earth so that fruit and vegetables can grow unencumbered. When I think the work of our hands, I think of my father. My father had rough, rugged hands. He worked construction most of his life. So out in the heat of summer or in the cold of western Pennsylvania winters, he worked with his hands. So his hands were rough and calloused and sometimes blistered, but always in the winter they were cracked and dry and hard. I could imagine that they probably were a little painful too, from all of the elements of the exposure. But that was the work of his hands. And he did that work until later in life when he worked in a steel mill, and he still worked with his hands, rough, hard work, until the time he retired. And then the work of his hands turned towards his hobbies, woodworking. And my sisters and I all have the products that he made in our homes, that work of his hands. It softened and became the work of his heart. The work of our hands is sometimes demanding with schedules and meetings, and now we have Zooms, and yet it's all for purpose. And we can be blessed by the work of our hands. As it says in Deuteronomy 28, the Lord will send a blessing on your barns and on everything you put your hands to. Everything that you put your hands to, the Lord God will bless you in the land he has given you. The Lord will open the heavens and the storehouses of his beauty and send rain on your land in seasons, and to bless the work of your hands. So whatever we do, whatever our work with, and we remember that the Lord is our highest consciousness. So when we live in that high consciousness, when we remember our own Christ consciousness and the Christ of others, we are blessed by living in that state of mind. We see blessings in things that we might not ordinarily see blessings in. So think about the work of your hands. Even if you're retired, even if you're on leave or there's something that you do each day, it might not be considered your job, but there are activities that fill your days. So the work of our hands tells us what we're willing to be ready for, what we feel is necessary for us to do. It's the things that we pick up and carry through our life, or it's the things that we set down and let go of in life. The work of our hands tells us what we hold, family treasures, perhaps, heirlooms of the family. So look at your hands. Really look at your hands. What's one word or phrase that comes to mind when you look at your hands? Call it out and put it in the comments section. What's a word or phrase that comes?
Strength.
Strength. Thank you, Peter.
Capable.
Capable. Oh, that's great. What else comes to mind? Look at your hands again. What do they tell you? What's the story of your hands?
Age.
Age. Yes, that's what But isn't it great? With age, we have a greater story to tell, don't we? Yeah. Caregiving. Yes, Kathy, that is you. Yes.
And from here, you've worked hard.
That you worked hard. Yes. What else? Anything? I imagine that Joseph's hands. Wow. Listening to him play, and I think gentleness, yet firmness and strength and capable, all of those things in those fingers that move so beautifully across the piano. Yes. Anybody else? What do your hands say? Being shy. Okay. But our stories, our hands tell us, what we've overcome sometimes. The challenges, the mountains that we were willing to climb to accomplish what we held in our heart. And what fears that we just looked face to face and said, get out of my way. I'm going forward. All of those things are in the work of our hands. So the work of our hearts can be different sometimes. Sometimes the work of our heart isn't at all like the work of our hands. Remember the disciples that Jesus said, lay down your nets and come follow me? They left the work of their hands for what became the work of their hearts to follow Jesus and his teachings. The work of our heart can often be the same. Sometimes we find that we need to do the work of our hands to get to the work of our heart. While I was in ministerial school, I was really fortunate because I had the work of my hands was also from my heart. And I worked in long-term care. And I worked with the seniors and I got to sit with them and hear their stories. Some of them were really hard stories. Some of them were very tender, easy, loving stories. I got to watch families come together after years of conflict, that they came together around their elderly parent who might be on hospice and facing the final days of their life. And what was really interesting, that I even got to see that gay and lesbian couples gained rights to make decisions for their partners. So I got to see a lot, and I found that in working in long-term care, I learned so much that serves me as I became a minister. So they sometimes meld. And when I think of the work of the heart, there's one person who exemplifies this more than anyone in my life. I consider her to be part of my angel's posse, and that's my grandmother. My grandmother was an immigrant from Belgium, and at the age of 5, she came to the United States. Can you imagine coming to a new land? She came by herself, by ship, and of course people met her in New York when she landed. And as she grew, she worked in a hotel in the town she lived in. And my grandfather was an immigrant also who came from France. And in western Pennsylvania, there were coal mines. So my grandfather was a coal miner. Talk about work of your hands being hard. Well, the coal miners stayed in the hotel owned by the coal company. And my grandmother and grandfather met, and as they say, the rest is history. And as the children came, my grandmother didn't work anymore, but as the children came, 1, 2, 3, 4, 14 children. And my grandmother did the work of her heart. She made clothes for her children. She saw to it that every one of her 14 children graduated high school, some went on to college, university. And she made all of their food from scratch. Now I told you she was from Belgium. And she used to tell me, well, the French think they know how to cook, but we Belgians really know how to cook. And she could empty a refrigerator and have a fabulous meal. When my grandmother baked bread, not only, which she did several times a week with a family of 14 children, 9 were boys, she baked bread enough for her family, but also for her neighbors. And that's what her neighbors remembered about her when she passed. They shared that story with me. So she did the work of her heart, and she did it with such great love. As life happens sometimes, my grandmother was my first caregiver. My mom was very ill, and I stayed with my grandmother. So I was literally her 15th child. And she tended to me and pressed my dresses just as she did all of the other children. She loved being a mother. She loved caring for her children. She loved all of her children with immeasurable love. So when I think of the work of our heart, she is the person who always comes to my mind as that perfect example of doing what you love and doing it with love. Always enough for the neighbors. So the work of our heart, it can be hard work. She grew rhubarb and strawberries, and she had apple trees and cherry trees. So there was a lot of work in tending to 14 kids, you can imagine. But it was done with love, and all of my aunts and uncles testified to that. So we have the work of our hearts. And sometimes there's just ever so subtle nuances between the work of our hands and the work of our hearts. Sometimes our hands afford us that greater ability to do the work of our hearts. So I told you about the work of my father's hands. And when he retired, he began the work of his heart. He taught Bible classes in his church. Every Christmas, he was a wise man in the live nativity. But what he was best known for in his church was building sets for plays. And it just so happened the sets that he built were for plays that my mom wrote. So my mom would write the play, create the costumes, and have the scripts ready for the drama team. And no one was allowed to read their lines. She was a tough master. You had to know your lines. But my father would collect cardboard, and from the cardboard, he would make the sets for all of the plays. So together, my mom and dad did tremendous work from their hearts. It's the work of their heart until their final days. I'm going to return to the words of Khalil Gibran, and he says this: "But I say to you, when you work, you feel a part of the earth's furthest dream assigned to you when the dream was born. And in keeping yourself in labor, you are in truth loving life. And to love life through labor is to be intimate with life's innermost secrets. And all work is empty when there is no love. And all that is to work, and what is it to work with love? It is to weave the cloth with threads drawn from your heart, even as if your beloved were to wear the cloth. It is to build a house with affection, even as if your beloved were to dwell in that house. It is to sow seeds with tenderness and reap the harvest with joy, even as if your beloved were to eat the fruit. It is to charge all things you fashion with the breath of your own spirit. Work is love made visible. And if you cannot work with love, but only with distaste, it's better that you should leave your work and sit at the gate of the temple and take alms from those who work with joy. For if you bake bread with indifference, you bake a bitter bread that feeds but half a man's hunger. And if you grudge the crushing of the grapes, your grudge distills the poison in the wine. And if you sing as though an angel, and love is not singing, you muffle a man's ears to the voice of the day and the voices of night." There's a plaque that I keep in my home. It says something very similar from 1 Corinthians. Let all you do be done with love. I know I've shared that probably most weeks here. Let all you do be done with love. If I do anything with discord in my heart, if I do anything with anything less than love in my heart, I infuse that task with a very low vibrational energy. I contribute that to the consciousness of the collective and to the world. I'm infusing a lesser energy if I'm not doing something with love. So I have often said, not necessarily to my teenage children, but I have often said, if you can't do something with love, don't do it. Put it aside. Let the laundry wait until you can do it with love. Let the dishwasher stack up until you can do it with love, so that you are infusing everything that you do with that power of love. Let everything you do be done with love. Sometimes tasks would need to wait until we recalibrate, until we recenter, until we connect ourselves with that love that is within us always. Maybe we've just forgotten it. Maybe we just need to become heart congruent, connect our mind with our heart so that we're moving from love. But whatever you do, let it be done with love. Be it a simple task or a heroic task. Do it with love. There's a poet you may have heard of, John O'Donohue, and he says this about blessing the work. May the light of your soul guide you. May the light of your soul bless the work you do with the secret love and warmth of your heart. May you see in what you do the beauty of your own soul. May the sacredness of your work bring healing, light, and renewal to those who work with you and to those who see and receive your work. May your work never weary you. May it release within you a wellspring of refreshment, inspiration, and even excitement. May you be present to what you do. May you never become lost in bland absence. May the day never burden you. May dawn find you awake and alert, approaching your new day with dreams, possibilities, and promise. May evening find you gracious and fulfilled. May you go into the night blessed and sheltered and protected. May your soul calm and console and renew you. So many blessings to you as you go about your work of your hands and the work of your hearts with love.